Hello and welcome to the Black Cooperative Investment Fund webinar. First of all, we want to thank all of you for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us for today's webinar so that you can learn more about BCIF. As we get started, we'd like to share a quote with you from our former President Barack Obama to set the tone for the webinar and what BCIF is all about. And that quote is, "Change will not come if we wait for some other person or some other time. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the change that we seek." And that quote is no more applicable than it is to the Black Cooperative Investment Fund, also known as BCIF. Some may ask, what's the problem? Why the need for a BCIF? Well, it's simple. The problem is that the Black community is facing economic genocide. True, while there's been progress economically over the last several decades, when we do a deeper dive into the numbers, there's still a long way to go, and there's some very troubling data that suggests the future isn't as bright as some of us may believe. Now let's look at the resources. African Americans have a collective buying power of $1.3 trillion. Now, to put that into perspective, that's enough money to buy ABC, NBC, CBS, and ESPN. Now, the number might be disputed. Maybe it's 800 billion, maybe it's 1 trillion, maybe it's even more, but we know the bottom line is we have the resources in our community. So if the African American community has so many resources, what's going on? There are a couple of things that really stand out. First is, just 2 cents of every dollar a Black person spends in this country goes to Black-owned businesses, meaning that money goes out and does not come back into the community. Now let's look at how the dollar circulates. In the Asian community, the dollar recycles for 30 days. In the Jewish community, it recycles for 20 days. In the white community, the dollar recycles for 17 days. But in the Black community, $1 circulates for only 6 hours. Yes, only 6 hours. It's kind of like that old Johnny Kemp song, "Just Got Paid Friday Night." Well, that's essentially what's going on in the Black community. The dollar's coming in and it's almost instantly gone. In addition to the dollar not being recycled in the Black community, there are other barriers. There are rigid financing requirements that restrict access to capital for the African American community. There are higher rates of unemployment, limited savings or financial reserves in our households. There's a lack of will or urgency, a general indifference from mainstream institutions to invest in the African American community, or as some would call economic sabotage. And then if we're honest, there's also a pervasive mistrust within the community that prevents African Americans from investing in their own. So how do we counter all these things? What are we prepared to do? What can you do to help stop the path toward economic genocide of the African American community? Join the BCIF movement. You can become a member of what is California's only community-based, non-bank controlled microlending nonprofit organization that is specifically geared toward building the economic strength of the African American community. BCIF is one of the most forward-thinking, one of the most promising movements for the African American community in Southern California since the Civil Rights era. So what is BCIF exactly? Well, its mission is based on the spirit of cooperative economics. BCIF is a community-based fund that provides microloans to African Americans that have a high likelihood of building assets through pooling dollars from individuals who are passionate about empowering the African American community. And we focus specifically on the Southern California region. Our ultimate vision is to provide a dedicated, reliable, and perpetual source of capital to create assets and build wealth for and within African American communities. BCIF also strives to serve as a catalytic force for building a critical mass movement of change based on economic imperatives. Essentially, we want to develop a space within this country in which African Americans have equal access to capital, opportunities to develop assets, and long-term financial security. And we can do this by increasing our financial muscle. We believe that in America, change comes about through fiscal imperatives, not through moral or ethical appeals. Simply put, when there's a perceived opportunity of making money or perceived risk of losing money, change comes about. By building the economic strength, the financial muscle of the African American community, we believe we put ourselves in a better position to get the change and justice that we seek. BCIF's financial goal is to raise a minimum of $500,000 annually. And with this $500,000, the fund will focus on 4 areas. 1 is to start businesses. 2, growth capital for existing businesses. 3, to secure real estate, whether it be investment property for commercial use or primary residential use. And 4, renovations or upgrades for real estate property. And why those areas? Why focus on real estate and business? Simply because it's widely acknowledged in America that ownership in these 2 areas are how people build financial assets and ultimately wealth. And with wealth comes real power to influence the social and political landscape, which is ultimately what BCIF is all about. Building our financial muscle is the means to that end. BCIF's objectives are to distribute 24 to 36 microloans annually. And of those loans, we want to annually help approximately 12 to 16 Black-owned companies or entrepreneurs build assets by securing necessary capital to start or grow their businesses. And we want to annually help approximately 8 to 12 Black-owned companies or individuals build assets through real estate purchase or renovation. We understand that the distribution of loans may not be equally distributed between real estate and business from year to year, depending on various factors, but our objective is certainly to invest in both areas. Now let's take a step back and revisit the overall landscape. Yeah, we've made progress in this country, but not really when you dig a little deeper. So let's take a look. Entrepreneurship among people of color is increasing. In 2012, LA County ranked 2nd in the number of African American owned firms. And of LA County's 631,218 firms owned by people of color, 7.1% were Black owned. Nationally, Black owned businesses increased 34.5% between 2007 and 2012, totaling about 2.6 million Black firms. More than 95% of these businesses, though, are mostly sole proprietorships or partnerships which have no paid employees, meaning they have more difficulty accessing capital given the dependence upon individual credit ratings. Startups founded by African American entrepreneurs receive disproportionately low funding. In one study conducted by CB Insights, startup ventures founded by African Americans were found to receive only 1% of seed and Series A funding nationally. With regard to home ownership, in LA, Black applicants are denied home loans at a rate of 21.6% compared to 11.5% for white home loan applicants. And predictably, home ownership rates among African Americans drag behind the rates for whites, specifically 32.9% compared to 58.3% respectively. And the trends are consistent nationwide. In fact, the gap between white and Black home ownership across the country is as wide now as it was in 1900, just a few years into the Jim Crow era. Now, as of 2014, the median household income in LA County was $55,870. In 2012, the median income of African American households in LA County was only $40,200. That's more than 20% below LA County's overall median household income when compared to Latino, Native American and Alaska Native, Asian, and white households. On top of all of that, there's a growing economic divide in this country. In a report called The Ever-Growing Gap that was released in August 2016, there were 2 major findings in there that should concern all of us. The first is, if the last 30 years of household wealth grows at the same rate for the next 30 years, the racial wealth divide between white households and Black and Latino households will stand at more than $1 million by the year 2043. The second finding really puts this in perspective. Assuming white wealth remains stagnant at today's levels and average Black wealth grew at the same pace it has over the past 3 decades, it would take average Black families about 225 years to amass the same amount of wealth white families have today. That's the year 2245, give or take. And that's just 20 or so years shorter than the 245-year span of slavery in this country. Now, when you look at other factors such as a lack of will and urgency or just general indifference from mainstream institutions to invest in the African American community, you look at rigid financing requirements such as high interest rates or redlining. You look at higher rates of unemployment in the African American community, limited savings or financial reserves, and then sometimes there's pervasive mistrust within the community itself. All of these dynamics play into this growing economic divide. Yes, there's been progress, and income within the Black community has grown, but so has it been for other communities. And the wealth divide is more staggering today than it has ever been in this country. This is our future unless we do something intentional and unapologetic to address it now. BCIF is just one solution to make that happen. We believe there's the will, capacity, and passion to generate significant impact. The African American population is the number one demographic group in U.S. giving. One study revealed Blacks give 25% more of their discretionary income for charitable purposes than whites. Starting from the late 1800s, African Americans have a rich history of self-help, survival, and pooling its resources to take care of its own, including cooperative financing and business incubators. Some of the most well-known examples include the Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and Rosewood, Florida in the early 20th century. There's the capacity. Specifically, Los Angeles is one of the top 5 metro areas for Black household income in the country. Of LA's Blacks with a minimum of some college education and or bachelor's degrees, the average household income is between $80,000 to $90,000 annually. If you look at the African American population for both LA and Riverside counties, looking at those between the ages of 21 and 64 years old, there are more than 560,000 people. When we look at the math, if 1 in every 1,200 of just African Americans alone in that demographic became BCIF members at $1,000 per year, BCIF would easily achieve its annual goal of $500,000. That just looks at the African American community. Imagine if all those concerned and invested in the progress and well-being of the Black community became BCIF members and what we could accomplish together. The efforts you see on the slide represent just a snapshot of those that are leveraging our economic power as a means to get the change that we seek. All across the country, if you're listening to some of our current and emerging socio-political minds, and even around the water coolers at work, or just out and about in our everyday lives, many are talking about economic empowerment as the necessary means toward achieving change for the African American community. It's a central theme right now, no question about it. Economic empowerment is gradually becoming the civil rights platform of choice for the 21st century. Now, the graphic you see on this slide represents a money tree because that's essentially what BCIF is doing. We're about planning and growing money for the African American community. And for every $500,000 in the fund, BCIF can produce a growth rate of 2.4 times the investment in net dollars generated for Southern California's Black community. That's just looking at Southern California, but let's think nationally. In 2014, more than 6 million African Americans alone generated a reported household income of more than $75,000. Just imagine if just 1% of these individuals gave $1,000 to BCIF or a similar fund. It could translate to more than $60 million for a fund of this kind. And at a 2.4 growth rate, we're talking more than $144 million on behalf of the African American community. Now imagine if there was a BCIF in the top 20 most populous cities for African Americans. Think of the $1.3 trillion in annual spending power we have, and if just a fraction of a percent was invested back into our communities. Imagine what we could do. More revenue generating activities, more jobs, more assets, more power. Now let's look at an overview of the loans. The amount range is $5,000 to $20,000. There's a monthly repayment schedule amortized over 2 years or 3 years with modest fixed interest rates. What we're looking for specifically includes our primary target population is African American residents or business owners in LA or Riverside County. We're looking for a strong potential for positive impact on the economic trajectory of the African American community. We're looking for compelling evidence that a loan will help yield a financial return in future asset building. Applicants must demonstrate the need and the capacity to repay, although stellar credit history is not required. An annual gross household income of less than $200,000 for individuals and less than $500,000 in gross annual revenues for businesses, and this includes startups. We're looking for experience, entrepreneurial, and/or innovative leadership. For real estate loans, we're targeting properties in communities with high concentrations of African American residents, and this includes owners of investment properties. We're looking for African American owned businesses, preferably those with the capacity to create jobs for other African Americans. We place a premium on borrowers that are aligned with the spirit of BCIF. So those who have a track record or an intention of investing back into the community, investing capital back into the fund, investing in others to help them advance as well, whether it be sharing of resources, providing technical assistance, business mentoring, or business coaching, helping others establish entrepreneurial programs. These are the type of borrowers that receive preference in the application process. On the slide, you see a couple of examples, one based on the business loan, the other based on the real estate loan. And both examples outline details that show how asset and wealth building results from each of the loans. The process for loan disbursements. Loan applications are submitted. BCIF staff conducts preliminary review and screening of the application. Applicants moving beyond the preliminary screening phase complete individual interviews. Staff completes other due diligence, such as a thorough financial review and other tasks. Requests moving beyond that stage are forwarded to the Loan Review Committee. The committee includes 5 BCIF donors and is chaired by at least one BCIF board member. The Loan Review Committee either approves or declines loans, and from there, borrowers are notified of their application approval and the loan amounts. Funding is processed and dispersed no more than 2 weeks after application approval. So as you can see, there's a multi-layered due diligence process involved. This ensures that there is proper due diligence, transparency, and accountability. The slide you're looking at now points out how accessing capital from BCIF is far more user-friendly for our borrowers than it is from other lending institutions. Just based on the $10,000 loan example with a 3-year repayment period, a BCIF borrower will repay approximately $11,500. Now, compared to other lending institutions, you can see the savings range anywhere from $1,000 or so to about $8,000 or so, all the way up through tens of thousands of dollars. So we're also looking out for our community, trying to make sure that they have user-friendly loans that don't strip them of their financial capacity. With regard to BCIF's own capacity, we have the expertise, skills, and passion to make this work and do it effectively. Our board is experienced and skilled with more than 120 years of collective professional experience in philanthropy, civic engagement, finance, investing, small business loans, banking, business development, and other areas. There's community accountability in that our loans are reviewed and approved by select donors with extensive experience and knowledge and ensure that the loans are aligned with our mission. We understand that passion alone is not enough to do this effectively. Our passion is backed by expertise. We have authentic leadership with knowledge of the issues, trends, and challenges impacting Southern California's Black community and beyond. There's proper oversight. Our board of directors is composed of individuals who provide governance, constructive guidance, and reflect a diversity of thought, experiences, and holistic perspectives. You can find our board of directors and their bios on the BCIF website under the leadership section. This slide looks at the sustainability plan for BCIF. So in addition to revenues generated from individual donors, or what we also call members, revenues are also generated through interest payments from borrowers, online advertising, foundation and corporate grants, special events, and merchandising. As you can see on the slide here, we have a vision for BCIF to grow from a $500,000 a year fund to one that is approaching $1 million by year 5. This is important for our donors to consider, and that there is a plan to grow and sustain BCIF. We want to breed confidence in our donors that BCIF plans to be around for the long haul. So if you don't have enough reasons to join the movement based on everything you've heard in this webinar so far, this slide lays out a multitude of reasons why you too should join the movement as a donor. What we know is that financial engineering fuels economic growth and it improves people's lives. It's a proven model, but it's only one that can work when we all do it together. The BCIF is based on the premise that the odds of getting change and justice are much greater when there is a perceived opportunity to make money or perceived risk of losing money. We know that the days of relying on moral or ethical imperatives or pulling on heartstrings to produce change are long behind us. BCIF is doing its part to build the financial muscle of the African American community so that it can create and move the change it seeks. So what are we asking of you? We're asking you to join the movement by becoming a BCIF donor, or what we affectionately refer to as members. We're asking for a minimum of $1,000 annually. It can be done in one of two ways: through a one-time gift or through a monthly contribution plan over 12 months. We have an online giving portal on the BCIF website that makes it very member-friendly, convenient for you to go on, include your account information, your gift is processed, and that's it. You become a BCIF member. As part of the monthly giving plan, monthly automatic deductions are required. Why? That way we can help you avoid those harassing reminders from us every month through phone or email, and your gift is simply processed seamlessly through our online portal. If you like to join the movement through other means, such as by check, no problem. Simply make a check payable to the Black Cooperative Investment Fund and send to 5792 West Jefferson Boulevard, Los Angeles, California, 90016. Again, that's a check payable to the Black Cooperative Investment Fund and send to 5792 West Jefferson Boulevard, Los Angeles, California, 90016. So what do you receive by becoming a BCIF member? You receive a tax credit for 75% of your gift amount. What happens to the other 25%? That portion is refunded to you. Refund payments are distributed quarterly for 1 year from the time of your gift. The chart on the slide illustrates how that's done using $1,000 as an example. You also receive a 10% discount on all BCIF hosted events and on all services or products that are offered by BCIF business loan recipients. So as we wrap up, we thought it was appropriate to share some quotes from some current BCIF donors. The reasons, as you can see here on the slide, are very compelling as to why people get involved with BCIF. Let's read the quote from BCIF member AP. I became a BCIF member because I care about what's going on with Black people as a whole in this country. I know as long as we lag behind others economically, our efforts for change are going to be longer, harder, and slower. I decided to put my money where my mouth is and became involved in an effort that will produce real change for people in communities I care about. It's always time for those who are passionate about Black progress to do the same. Put some skin in the game. It's all about action, and I choose to do that through the power of my dollar. Now, that quote comes from an African American member, but as we said earlier, for anyone who is concerned about or invested in the well-being and progress of the African American community, there's a place for you with BCIF. Let's look at a quote from BCIF member KG, who happens to be a white donor. KG says, empowering the Black community through economic development is not a Black issue. This is a matter of justice. As a white philanthropist, I can't imagine anything better than investing in justice through BCIF. The reasons are compelling. People are passionate about BCIF, and we hope you too share the same passion. So we're going to close out here. As you can see, looking at the hashtags, those are our battle cries. BCIF is no talk, all action. We're about weaponizing our dollars. We're about change, not charity. The time is now for us to do this, and we're urging everyone out there, regardless of your background, to get and stay woke, stay aware, stay conscious of what's going on, and understand that economic empowerment is the pathway towards justice and change. We invite people from all backgrounds to join the movement, from millennials all the way up to baby boomers and everyone in between. BCIF is a major game-changing movement. Again, it's California's only community-based, non-bank-controlled, microlending nonprofit organization specifically geared toward the African-American community. BCIF is based on the spirit of cooperative economics, and it's an approach that works, but only if you, we, us, make it work by becoming a member. Again, you can go to the online portal to start your gift and become a member today. So with that, thank you for taking time out of your schedules to join us for today's webinar. We'll now open it up for some Q&A and some discussion.